Hello, Nav Cavale here, plastic surgeon. Welcome to the Real Clinic Podast, sponsored by 42 South Films. This is where we take a behind-the-scenes look at the surgery industry, get to meet key players in the business, learn about setting up a clinic such as Real, and meet some of the best surgeons around. Today I'm really pleased and really excited that we've got Francesca White, who is not only the founder of the Beauty Triangle, but is also editor-at-large. You need to explain to me what that means.
100%.
So editor-at-large with Tatler, and puts together the cosmetic surgery guide and the beauty guide of Tatler. Thank you very much for coming all the way here to Battersea.
It's such a pleasure. I love coming out here. It's nice to see daylight streaming in a hospital, weirdly.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, no, that's what I'm really proud of, actually. Yeah. It's bright lights and big windows.
Yeah,
and,
it's beautiful.
Thank you. We've been working together for a few years now. Mm-hmm. But before we get on to that, I tell you what, it's like the Cilla Black question in Blind Dates. What's your name? Where'd you come from?
I love that. I always try and roll that into the Beauty Triangle panels whenever I ask people to introduce themselves. You introduced me, Nav, already, so I don't have to go into that. But my role essentially is I'm the founder of the Beauty Triangle. I'm also Tatler's Health and Beauty Editor-at-large. So just to quickly recap on that, that means that I am the eyes and ears from a beauty perspective for the Tatler publication. Right. I used to be there as the beauty director. So my main responsibility was the entirety of the beauty pages, sort of 8-9 pages a month per issue. Plus I used to do the spa guide, the surgery guide and the gym guide. Beauty editor-at-large means that I'm no longer in the office. I'm a bit of a free agent. I sort of roam freely, but I still contribute to the sort of beauty and health content.
Is it sort of like, is it effectively a way of saying freelance?
Yes, freelance, but still attached to the magazine. My name is still on the masthead. Yeah. I'm not allowed to, nor would I want to, go and work with any other publications. Yeah. That is, Tatler is my main publication.
That's your home, yeah.
Exactly. It genuinely is, and it's the first job I ever had 13 years ago.
Yeah, tell me about that then. So how did it all start? What's your background? What did you study?
So I studied at Central St Martin's. Initially I wanted to be in fashion. So I did a fascinating degree called Criticism, Curation and Communication, which is a real mouthful, and sadly they don't do it anymore. But a lot of things have changed at St Martin's, I'm sure you know, not least their location. But the degree was very much about how to critique, how to communicate, obviously, and also how to curate. So a lot of what I did as a degree was learning how to be a curator. And I spent years just trailing around London galleries, exhibitions, museums, and looking at not just how they present artworks, paintings, sculptures, sort of visibly for the public to engage in, but also how people move through the space, how to edit copy, how to put together a program for an exhibition, how to market it. So really, really interesting when you compare how you curate an exhibition to the role of a journalist or an editor, which is essentially doing exactly the same thing, but on paper format. Yeah. And I always really liked that, looking at the magazine and thinking, take the Beauty and Cosmetic Surgery Guide, which you mentioned, for example, how does the reader actually engage with this? That, yes, it's really exciting because you've got sort of the top doctors and the surgeons and the latest treatments, but, how is it all balanced? You want a really nice mixture of products, and then you want to go into a very long considered read, then you want something short and pacey and fun, and then you want something a little bit more voyeuristic. So it's constantly looking at how you're presenting information.
So this is probably so removed from how I think about it. In a way, we're so trained and what we do day to day as a surgeon or as a clinic.
Of course.
It's all about the actual, I don't know, I don't want to say style over substance, but in a way we ignore the style. I suspect, and that's where actually this is where I'm really hoping we can have a good chat is if someone like me who's never, I just want to go and start cutting, that's what I'd like to do. That's the traditional surgeon is, just put a knife and a fork in my hand, stick a light over the top of me, and I'll just
let you get down to business.
Let me get on with it. Now, actually, we know that being a surgeon, for example, is a lot more than that. It's it's all about being a good doctor. It's all about being a good teacher.
So much wrapped up in what you have to do.
So there's a whole load of that we won't necessarily get into. But when it comes to the presentation, and I've had a bit of a taste of that now, with setting this place up, for example, what would you say, and perhaps we can talk about how you and I have worked over the years. Maybe that's something to use as an example, good or bad. What would you say someone like me should be thinking about that I don't have a clue about actually when I come out and become I've come out of plastic surgery school, say, and I'm starting out. Actually, what is it that you're really wanting to shake my collar and say, please don't ignore this?
It's interesting because you mentioned style over substance, and it's that similar analogy as sort of quality, not quantity, isn't it? You want a healthy balance of the two. And I often think, we do work in an aesthetic specialism, and yes, safety and how you look after your patient, the end result you give them is absolutely paramount. But I think we live in such a visual and aesthetically led society nowadays. Yes, you only have to look at social media, Instagram, which is predominantly a platform for visual ideas.
Yeah.
If you're on Twitter, you're communicating through the medium of language.
Yeah.
And as a writer, that's fantastic. But Instagram, that form of social media, that is purely about what people see.
Yeah.
And so I think, and you touched on it when you said, the creation of Real here in Battersea, you obviously had to think about it that much more. I think we can't ignore actually what everyday consumers see, what patients see. It's fantastic to know that they're coming in and they're having an absolutely top-notch surgical procedure with yourself, and hopefully they'll have a phenomenal end result and be very, very happy for a long time afterwards. But what's the first thing that they see? What are they met with?
Yeah.
And for a facility like this, obviously it's very high spec, it's modern, it's gleaming, it's glassy, it's warm, it's welcoming at the same time. And so I think you have to actually think about all of those sort of periphery elements, which I suppose sometimes surgeons might overlook because they think it's about the qualifications and it's about this and it's about, the number of hours and procedures I'm racking up.
Yeah.
It is, yes, but sadly, because of the way that consumers now are, we have to think about all of the other
And actually, I think
things.
that's, as a surgeon and as what I would call a proper surgeon, I think that's one of the things that we have perhaps ignored to our detriment, because there's a whole world out there that hasn't.
Yeah.
And in a way, there's an awful lot that we've been left behind by. And it's not necessarily the best people or the most qualified or the best quality services out there. And again, social media, there's an awful lot of stuff that kids are being exposed to.
Well, there's misinformation, isn't there? There's a lot of unnecessary noise.
And so what about if we can just take a slight tangent? So, for example, let's say the people that are the most engaging on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and Twitter even, the people that are doing really, really well out there that are not necessarily the people that I would want my patients or my kids going to go and see.
Yeah.
What do you think that somebody like myself can perhaps work with someone like yourself to try and do better, so that we're now sort of beating the Cowboys at their own game?
I see what you mean. I think the first thing to remember is that actually you have done the right thing. It may seem, and I'm sure for a lot of practitioners, HCP surgeons, they might look on TikTok, Instagram and see these people with 1 million followers, constantly putting content out there and think, wow, they're doing so well, they're so successful. At the end of the day, what you have built and what I think your colleagues and the people that will hopefully be listening to this podcast will have created and built during their tenure as medical professionals will be something that is a really quality product.
Yeah.
They will have done their proper training degrees, mentorships. They will be at the top of their game professionally, technically as surgeons and doctors. So actually, I think going from that and then making that more visible is far easier because you've got the quality already.
Yeah.
You are already a fantastic practitioner. Much more so than the people who haven't got that grounding. They haven't got that foundation of medical excellence.
Yeah.
They're just going out there and trying to be very visible.
Yeah.
So I think that's the first thing to remember, that actually you've done the hard work actually as a really good bona fide doctor surgeon. Yeah, absolutely. And when you do go out there, it's a case of it's marketing, it's presentation, it's PR, it's making yourself visible. And it's also knowing that when you do go out there and you do all of those things, you're doing it in the most authentic way possible.
Yeah.
And you have a project that you're passionate about. You have substance to you as well. So I think that's really key. I think all of those things that I just mentioned, visibility, PR, social media, marketing, a lot of the ways that you and I have worked together as well. the sands are definitely shifting on how we even communicate right now. And I think there are so many different ways that we can raise our profiles as healthcare practitioners and surgeons and whatnot. So, we've obviously touched on Tatler, for example, and the work I do there. And I always think that's a really fantastic thing for surgeons, doctors to know about if they don't already. Most people seem to know about it.
And I'm sure that's one of the things that people will be tuning in to hear about. So, I'm really pleased and proud to be in the Tatler Guide, and I've been in it for 3 years now. And started off with, just me. And then actually we were really lucky that the clinic got in as well last year. And then this year, again, it's me about rhinoplasty. Now, I don't know, to be honest, I don't quite know how I did that. Okay, I don't quite know.
I think it's got something to do with you doing good work.
Maybe, yeah. But what I guess everyone's going, but I'm, all surgeons think they're the best.
Of course.
So for all those surgeons who know they're the best and think they're the best and believe that they are the best, what is it that, and those that are not in the guide, what is it that they should do? What do they need to be doing in order to I see it as getting lucky,
I think there's a little bit of what I touched on before, which was, obviously having the backbone of being a brilliant medical professional, having really quality work and people who vouch for your work as well. I always find it interesting, and I often say to other surgeons, other doctors, who do you refer to? If you're sort of presented with a patient and they're not actually the right candidate, and you think, actually, I know a surgeon who'd be better for you. Who are those people and why do you trust them? And I really take that on board as an editor when sort of looking out there for new names. I think being visible, making sure that you are out there, just so that, sadly, editors are time poor and we're very, we're human beings as well. So I think connecting with us in the same way that I try to connect with other doctors and healthcare practitioners and sort of surgeons like yourself is really, really important. It's about human beings, and it's about, finding people that even if you don't click with them, somebody will click with them. And I always think there's a practitioner for every patient. So it's a case of just knowing as many people out there so you can really think, yes, this is the best surgeon for this sort of a person, and this is somebody who's doing something new and exciting, and making sure you've got a really nice spread of different people within that guide, because it's a big guide, but actually it's limited as to how many people. Because to be fair, a lot of people are all essentially doing the same thing, the same procedures, the same injecting techniques, whatever it might be. So there's a little bit of wanting the variety, but also making sure that you have the very best caliber of people. And I think just, sort of being able to connect with people and forging those relationships is really important.
And what the trouble is, I think if I'm not careful, I'll end up, sending a whole load of people to start stalking you.
Yes.
And you don't want that. So I'm hoping I won't end up sending you a whole load of people to stalk you.
That's fine. Maybe I'll get some Instagram followers.
Exactly. So, but I think what would be good is for people to. I guess what you're saying is people should basically make friends. Become part of the network.
I think make friends. Be visible. Go to these industry awards. Come to the conferences. We've just had ACE this weekend. We had the Aesthetics Awards, and I meet a lot of people through going to these conferences actually, and just going up and saying hello to people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And look, as much as you say, I don't want to send a load of people your way to stalk you, I get a lot of people dropping into my Instagram inbox, and sort of reaching out that way. So I think there are so many more ways that we can connect with one another than before. It's not really a case of having to just drop somebody an email and hoping they reply of when they've gone through the quagmire of their inbox. So I think, again, just reaching out and also knowing how to best work with journalists, because as I mentioned earlier, we're time poor, but we also need ideas and we need content on a fairly regular basis. So it's making yourself accessible and available and helpful. If I do go to somebody and say, it's really last minute, I've got to file some copy by tomorrow, I need a quote on X, Y, and Z, could you help? Taking that opportunity and saying yes, and as soon as you possibly can, getting some really good content back, versus people who sort of sit on it and think, I need to have a think about that. You miss the boat somewhat.
It is. I think it's a vast business as far as I can make out, because I met you through Angeli Marto.
You did, yes.
And then obviously
at the Aesthetics Awards, I believe, many years ago.
It was a long time, and that was a really good link. And then since then we've worked, via Becky, who does our PR.
Yes.
And so we've got this sort of network now.
But we still, just going back to that, we still met probably, I want to say 6 years ago, maybe 7, and I think because the industry is so big, it's not to say you meet people and then the next year you find yourself writing about them in the surgery guide.
No.
I also think there's something very important about watching people grow over time as well, and just sort of having eyes everywhere and being friends with everyone, and then just going, you're a wonderful example. When you and I first met, I think you were working at the Cadogan Clinic, you had a very successful practice there. A couple of years later, and suddenly you were building Real, and you were collaborating with other surgeons, and your rhinoplasty practice was really taking, there was suddenly a lot of momentum and growth. And I think, the rest of the industry sees that, journalists see that. And I think that's important for us as well.
That's what,
it is. So you connect with a lot of people, but also it's nurturing those relationships and then watching where those individuals go as well.
Yeah. And I think just in terms of being dynamic and out there and kind of reacting quickly, it's not so much what you and I do necessarily, because I think in a way I see your work and the work we do together as being the sort of slow burn and medium, not necessarily long term, because who knows where that's going to take us, but it's not the quick kind of, responses, whereas actually,
it's not buying Instagram followers quickly and then, getting a facelift booked in the next day.
Possibly what I would say, which is not necessarily what you and I are doing, is I get lots of WhatsApp messages saying, can you quickly give me a quote on this? Or can you quickly respond to that? I think that's helped as well, actually, from my point of view, because it's given me a presence on Google, for example. So there's perhaps... And
that stuff can't be underestimated now. Google, SEO, that's something I've had to learn all about in recent years with the beauty triangle.
Exactly. So what do you think, perhaps just to talk about that side of things, because I don't necessarily, again, I always think of myself as being someone who gets lucky, who kind of, fumbles around and kind of made it work, and it kind of made sense, and let's do that, let's do this, and it's thankfully it's all working out. But again, as somebody who I look up to and respect when it comes to getting in touch with journalists, getting things into the press, what should someone like me, again, who's starting out, be doing, not necessarily to get into the beauty triangle or the Tatler guide, but to get their presence out there? Social media, fine, okay, we've talked about that, but what about getting into the papers?
Yeah, I mean, you're right, because social media is something you control yourself. I mean, essentially, yes, you can outsource it, but it should be, I really firmly believe with social media, like yourself, your authenticity, your voice coming through, because that's how people connect with you. I think to forge those relationships with journalists, a really good PR can't be underestimated. And PRs come in many shapes and sizes and guises and forms, as we all know. And some people have very positive stories to share from working with PRs, and some people have less positive stories to share. So there really is a very broad spectrum. And much like, there's a practitioner for every patient, there's a PR for every doctor. Yep. And I think it's just about finding your perfect match with somebody. And if you are starting out, not thinking I have to go to the big shiny agency where they're putting me on a big monthly retainer and this is costing me an arm and a leg, but it's going to be worth it because I'm going to be in Tatler this year. I actually think there's far more value in finding somebody who understands you, maybe somebody slightly smaller. I mean, Becky, who does your PR, is a fantastic example, because I'm sure she has a little bit of support externally, but she is a powerhouse, but she's also a one-man band, essentially. Yeah, absolutely. And she really takes the time to get to know her patients, and she's very strategic and precise when I think she comes to targeting publications. You don't want somebody who's going out with a scattergun approach and just trying to hit up every publication and tabloid and social media influencer. I think you have to be very, very targeted and think, who am I? Who is my patient? Where is my patient spending their time? What magazines are they reading? What newspapers are they reading? What influencers, if any, women of influence, men of influence, do they identify with? And being very, very precise about then how you target them. And I think the right PR will do that for you. But like I said, I don't think it's about having these big sort of agencies who sort of promise you the world. I actually think it's just aligning with one person who understands you and your goals and who will work with you over time, slowly, sustainably, the slow burn, like you said, but who will make the right introductions.
And how does somebody go about, how do they even get started finding a PR, for example? Do you think so? Actually,
recommendations, I would say, just to answer that one quickly. A lot of people will come to me and say, I've never worked with a PR. Who do you recommend? But I suppose going back
And
to that, if they don't...
do they ask someone like you that? Because I mean, feel free to ask me. I don't know necessarily what the answer would be, but I'd probably say speak to Becky, and she will find you someone, because Becky will also have her portfolio, and she'll say, I'm now full. I've got Nav, who's my plastic surgeon. I've got Anjali, who's a dermatologist. I've got so and so.
But I know such and such who's doing some great work, and she could be a great fit for you.
And just very quickly, so you touched upon what is for example, having a one-man band for someone like me, just more generically, and you don't name names, but what is a good coupling of surgeon/clinic and PR? Give me how some of the good examples work. What do they look like?
I would say it's somebody who grows with you, who understands what your goals and what your future looks like for you, and who basically works with you day on day, week on week, to ensure that happens. Yeah. I think often, you said, how do you find these people? And it's a case of, I think, asking for recommendations, asking friends, asking people you trust and who you value. In the same way that I say, I ask surgeons for who they refer to and who they trust. Who do the other PRs trust? Who do the journalists like working with? I think, a lot of the relationships that we see between successful PRs and successful clinics are ones that don't shop around too much as well. I think the temptation can be, I've worked with this person for 3 months and I haven't seen that Tatler coverage hit yet. I'm going to go and find, the next agency promises me that they're best friends with the editor. PR, again, is not... it's not something that you will see an immediate return on. No. A lot of what happens in the world of PR is not tangible in terms of what you're going to get back. And so I think you have to remember that and have that respect for one another and trust the PR as well.
I think so, absolutely. I think that makes a lot of sense, because I am having to speak to people I work with, for example, within the clinic. It's like, guys, just wait. It's coming, okay? And it's organic is what I would say. Yeah. I think an awful lot of this industry is organic, and it is about making friends and being nice to people and working together and all the stuff,
and being realistic and realizing that lots of these little mentions, like you say, all add up to general awareness. I think everybody thinks, I just need one big piece in Tatler or one big piece in the Times or Glamour or whatever it might be, and that's great, but that is just one piece, and it is just one issue,
and it'll drift down and down and down.
Exactly, it's the hot topic for a week, and then everyone forgets about it. Absolutely. And actually, far better to have constant seedings. It might just be a quote here, a quote there, a reference to your clinic, a new treatment that you're doing, but far better to have the constant drip feeding of information, so that your name or your clinic's name is always up there and always part of the conversation. I think that is so much more valuable. And the other thing that I sometimes say to people is, it's not just about journalists writing about you and then a load of consumers, a load of patients coming in. Sometimes it's things like, and you see this a lot with the non-surgeons, right? The sort of aesthetic doctors, the injectors. It's the brands that are then attracted to them. If we're looking at this from a business, from a more transactional point of view, when the big pharma companies, when the skincare companies, when they're looking for their next KOL or their press ambassador or whoever it might be, their spokesperson for their latest campaign, they really look at what all the writers and the journalists and the editors are saying as well. It always really interests me that we can write about a doctor who is relatively unknown in Tatler one year, and the next year they've got a big contract with the skincare brand. So it's not just about how you're connecting with consumers, it's how you're connecting within the rest of your industry.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And then very quickly, before I forget, just to turn my last question on its head, what does a bad pairing of PR and surgeon, or PR and doctor, or industry and doctor look like?
I think it's being...
Again, without naming names.
Yes. I'll try my best not to drop any names into this one. I think it's being unrealistic about what everybody is trying to achieve. Yeah. I think a PR needs to be very honest and straight and direct with the client. And if the client says, this is what I want to get, if it doesn't seem possible, the PR needs to be telling you that. And really, they should be sort of tempering it and helping you see what is manageable and scaling that as well. Yeah. I think when it's a bad arrangement, a bad marriage, sadly, of a PR and a doctor, there's just miscommunication. And, the doctor might think they're, like I said, going to end up with a double page spread in Tatler, and actually the PR's thinking, I got you a quote in that sidebar. So I think it's managing expectations a lot of the time.
I mean, it's that's
With
that's,
the same
that's
as
the same as
what you do.
exactly,
Everything is about
absolutely.
managing expectations,
So,
right?
no, that's great. Actually. I'm just a little bit conscious of time. Can we move on to more of what you and I have done over the years, just so that people can see that as an example, good or bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've been working together, as we've said, both with Tatler as well and the Beauty Triangle. So let's start off with your baby, the Beauty Triangle. Tell me about that, and then let's talk about how it's worked for you and I over the year.
So I think the Beauty Triangle was very much born out of the work that I was doing at Tatler every day. So the beauty and cosmetic surgery guide, but also the spa guide. Yeah. So very much looking at those two worlds. And I always felt that aesthetics and surgery and spas, wellbeing, wellness were kept very separate. And what I really wanted to do was have those conversations where we brought it all together. But more than that, also because people ask me all the time for recommendations. I only have to go to a dinner party or a press event or whatever it might be, and people find out what I do for a living, and they're saying to me, who's the best breast surgeon? Who do I send my daughter to for her acne? Where do I go, to speak to somebody about freezing my eggs? There's so many sort of relevant and personal and powerful, important questions that come up that I just thought, my goodness, there's such an absence of a space where we can have these really expert-led conversations in what feels like a safe space, and we can really connect with consumers, and at the same time destigmatize aesthetics and plastic surgery, bring it into the room where well-being and wellness resides rather, and sort of make it a bit more of a 360-degree approach. So the Beauty Triangle was set up 5 years ago. We started doing sort of little intimate monthly events. We did them at all the members clubs throughout London, sort of Annabelle's, George Club, Lanzerhof, the Lanesborough, and it's sort of grown and grown. And it accumulated in January this year with the Beauty Triangle Festival. We had sort of 400 people there. It was a very immersive experience. We partnered with a lot of the sort of big pharma brands as well. They were there doing consultations, treatment testers. We had amazing journalists on the main stage, sort of opening it up to different audience, different people. And yeah, sort of it's pushing that forwards and sort of just trying to connect with more and more and more people and really just sort of make it one big conversation.
Fantastic. And what are you looking to do in terms of the future of the Beauty Triangle? Where do we go from here? Because you and I've been part of it relatively recently, the last couple of years, isn't it?
You have, exactly. So we obviously sort of work with a number of, people who we consider to be absolute experts, top of their game individuals, lots of different specialisms. We work with dermatologists, we work with plastic surgeons, psychotherapists, nutritionists, personal trainers, whatever it might be. And the idea is that we always have a sort of a 3-pronged panel for every event that we host with all these experts. And I think we did one at Annabelle's about a month or so ago, didn't we? Yeah. You were sat along a dermatologist and a hair transplant surgeon, and we sort of spoke about the mind-body link and the importance of understanding the psychology before people pursue these sort of these certain procedures and treatments. And yeah, I suppose we've always tried to align with people who are top of their game, but who can also connect with consumers. So that's how I work with doctors and practitioners. They're invited to speak on our panel, become part of our Beauty Triangle community. They, in turn, I suppose, also connect with other brilliant experts, doctors, surgeons who are in our sort of community. And I like to think that we're sort of building bridges in that sense as well. We're not sort of seeing anyone as an individual who can do all things. We're saying actually the best approach comes from, seeing a dermatologist, seeing a hair transplant specialist, and also seeing a plastic surgeon. That's how probably you're going to get the best end result for whatever it is that you might be sort of seeing. And at the same time, hopefully sort of connecting those people so that you are better sort of connected within your own industry.
And what does the future hold for the Beauty Triangle? What's the next step up that you can see coming?
I think doing things on a bigger scale. I think the festival was, it was the first time we'd done something on that scale. Like I said, we normally have sort of 30 to 50 people at an event, and we had 400. I think for us, it's about taking that next step and doing things on a bigger scale. Also, a lot of what we do is very London focused, and I'm very intent next year that we make it much more regional and we look at different areas of the UK. We go and look at Liverpool and Manchester, go up to Scotland, because these conversations, we sometimes get very hemmed in thinking it's all about London and it all happens in London. And yes, London attracts some incredible doctors and medical professionals, but that's not to say the rest of the UK doesn't have an appetite for this as well. And there's a lot of appetite elsewhere.
And international?
International, 100%.
Yeah.
We're also looking at, in fact, we have an event planned in Dubai this May, so in another sort of month and a half or so, which is exciting. Need to do a little bit more planning for that one, but that's also sort of another step in the sort of international circuit. I think it doesn't feel like too much of a departure, because I'm not sure if you'll agree, but there's a lot of foot traffic between the UK and Dubai.
Yeah.
A lot of the doctors we work with, a lot of the clinics, a lot of the pharmaceutical brands, they all have a foothold in Dubai. They're starting to look at it. They already have a presence. So it feels like the natural transition maybe to go towards the UAE.
We've thought about it for real as well.
Yeah. Is it something you might do?
We have thought about it. It is something. In terms of working abroad, I've never really practiced abroad as a surgeon. But again,
you've done a lot of charity stuff. I suppose.
Exactly, I do that. Yeah, exactly, that's a different. But when it comes to this stuff, I have not. But I've wondered actually, and perhaps we can talk about Dubai. But I have thought about, and I have spoken to a few people about potentially branching out. I think you are right in that, between Dubai and London, certainly there is this bridge that's forming.
Yeah.
And we've always said, perhaps it's a bit like Only Fools and Horses. It's like Peckham, New York, London, Peckham. So
exactly.
It could be Battersea, New York, London, Dubai, or something.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
I can see that happening. And then, are you going to be expanding, for example, the number of doctors that you work with?
I think so. I think as we do larger scale events, as we do more of them, obviously that opens up, we're somewhat limited on how many sort of doctors and speakers we can sort of work with by the number of events that we can host fundamentally. Yeah. So the bigger the events, the more of them that we can do, obviously we can work with more people. And that's really exciting because the industry is growing. There are more and more and more amazing practitioners sort of coming onto our radar all the time. But I also think there are some really fascinating specialisms as well, sort of things that weren't being done a long time ago. There's obviously a huge focus now on longevity, on regenerative medicine, on biohacking. Yeah. And that's a conversation that a lot of people are very interested in. And it's also a bit of a somewhat a gateway, I sometimes think, to aesthetics and surgery. Yeah. Everybody wants to live for longer. Everybody wants better quality of life, for their later years. And they go hand in hand with a lot of the aesthetic procedures we're talking about, a lot of the surgical procedures we speak about. So I think that's a really important sort of topic and an area of content to integrate into the conversations we're having. So that, there are lots of different areas we're looking at. Women's health is another huge one. And we touch on it, we often do things in support of Breast Cancer Awareness Month. We've done sort of postpartum talks, fertility sort of related content. But again, I think the noise around that, menopause awareness, the role that BHRT plays, it's huge now. And it's something that everybody is interested in if they're female. They may not be interested in talking about Botox and facelifts and having their boobs done, but my goodness, they want to know about how to manage their hormones, because that is fundamental to how they feel every single day of their life. And so again, I think we're just looking at all of these different specialisms and thinking, gosh, health and well-being is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So our conversations need to get bigger, and therefore our community needs to as well.
And I think as surgeons as well, us having been a little bit blinkered, in terms of it's all about the cutting and being the best at the cutting and stitching, we have broadened our outlook a bit in terms of the non-surgical stuff, and the business
and the support network that you try to build around your patients. Even the referrals that you make once somebody's facelift is done. Who's the manual lymphatic drainage expert that you're saying, actually, do you know what, this is good, go and see this person, or who's the nutritionist.
I think you're absolutely right. We have been thinking about, we really should be looking a bit further outwards, because again, I'm always criticizing plastic surgeons for being inward looking.
And it's easy to be,
exactly,
it's always very difficult to see the wood for the trees when it's our own business.
Exactly. And now I think the things like the preventative stuff that you're talking about, the biohacking, even things like weight management, nutrition management, as you said, perimenopause, peri-pregnancy stuff. This is all the kind of stuff that we've been thinking about putting in downstairs. Don't necessarily know how to do it. So all ideas and suggestions welcome.
That's the next podcast.
But that's the kind of next. That's what we're looking to. But no, I think that sounds great actually. But let's.
Let's have a chat about it. We'll have more chats about Dubai and getting you out there as well.
Absolutely. So again, I don't want to dwell on it for too long, and I'm sure you're sick and tired of talking about it because people probably pick your brains constantly. The Tatler guide. Mm-hmm. We've had a bit of an indication as to what people need to be doing in terms of, putting yourself out there in the long-term burn. What's the future for that? Where, it's going from strength to strength.
It really is.
It's, what are the, without, I'm sure you're not allowed
revealing
to.
too much about the ground plan.
I'm sure you're not, I'm sure that's all
In all honesty, it's sort of taking every single year of that guide as it comes. We just celebrated the 20th year of the Beauty and Cosmetic Surgery Guide, which is incredible. I've been editing it for maybe, goodness, I don't know, 6-7 years.
Okay.
And before that, there have been some incredible sort of editors, predecessors of mine who all sort of ran it and sort of owned it. But it is fascinating to see how it's grown. It's a very commercially successful guide. It is held in incredibly high esteem, I think, within our industry, which is enormously sort of exciting for us as well as the people who are steering it, I suppose. But yeah, it's going in all different avenues. And I don't know if you know this, Tatler launched its address book a couple of years ago. So there's also an online version. There's an in-print version now. So actually, I think it's every February they sort of launch a sort of little, it's almost like a little black book, a little directory of all the people you need to know. So we see actually a lot of doctors who maybe have a presence in the surgery guide, or maybe they don't yet have a presence in there and editorially they'd like to, but they're sort of, placing themselves within the address book. It is a paid for opportunity, but it's very beautifully done, as everything that Tatler as Condé Nast does is. And the Tatler name, it's over 300 years old. It carries an enormous amount of weight and respect with its readers. So I think when consumers see a doctor's name, a clinic's name in the address book, even if it's a paid for opportunity, they still really read it and they look and they keep that by I would say their phone, but I don't think anyone even has a home phone anymore. They stash it somewhere where they see it all the time.
In the kitchen somewhere, probably.
Exactly, down the side of the bed.
Yeah.
The surgery guide gets bigger and bigger every single year. We normally do the 40 best doctors, and that's our sort of top doctors list. And this year I did 50 because I thought, well, it's getting bigger. Yeah. This is a 20-year celebration. Let's really celebrate all the amazing people. But it's still hard to get people into 50. My goodness, I could do 500.
And I've always thought of Tatler as being a very British publication, and I'm guessing it traditionally has.
It is, yeah.
But it also looks like it's going more and more international.
I think our audience, our readership are very international as well. Yeah. If you think about the typical Tatler reader, and we have fascinating data to support this, they own more than one house. They typically have a second house abroad. Their children go to these schools. Tatler readers are more likely than any other magazine reader to buy a racehorse. It's fascinating, the intel. But they are international, and even if they don't have a base, a home, whatnot, they're traveling a lot as well. And I think Tatler does very well in airports for that reason as well. Our readership are always hopping on a plane, going somewhere, hotel, spa, business trip. They are people who are dynamic and social and all eyes and ears everywhere.
So is the guide then going to branch out perhaps to feature?
We have always introduced international doctors when it feels relevant and necessary. We didn't actually do a section on international doctors this year, only because I think with 20 years we really wanted the focus to be on the best of the UK, best of British really. We did touch on, I think, some of the most glamorous places to go abroad and have procedures at. Yeah. The sort of Clinique Prairies of the world, and where to stay in New York when you've had a facelift with Andrew Giacono, that sort of thing. But where relevant, we do pick up on the international doctors. Although, it's really humbling and it's wonderful to hear. But sometimes I speak to international colleagues who I think are fantastic at what they do, and I say, who's amazing? Who do you sort of refer to and they go, you guys don't need to come and see us. You've got great surgeons in the UK. You've got great doctors in the UK. And you and I have had so many conversations about this. But sometimes there's a risk in travelling too far afield as well. So, yes, there are some real pioneers in sort of other countries and people that I'm sure you look to in other sort of areas of the world as well for your surgical technique. Like I'm sure they look at you, but also for the UK patient, I think we want to give them UK doctors.
Absolutely, that's one of the things that we're going on and on about as surgeons in the UK, as members of all the learned societies, as the ones who are properly trained, all those tick boxes, is that be careful about traveling abroad. I mean, I'm not going to, sound like a hypocrite, and I try not to pretend to be hypocritical, because I get patients who come from abroad as well. But I hope I do it in the right way. And one of the messages, not necessarily what we're talking about here, is, the pitfalls of cosmetic tourism.
Yeah.
But actually, one of the things that I do love doing is traveling, and I'm off to Cartagena for ISAPS, for example, in June, and I'm going to tag on a visit to Mike Nyack, who's, quite a big face and neck surgeon in St. Louis.
And that's amazing, to actually be traveling and sort of learning and bringing that back. I think that's exactly what people should be doing in your profession.
I mean, that's one of the things I'm constantly saying to my colleagues in the UK is, get out there more, even if you're not going on a formal fellowship as part of your training. Keep visiting,
and on the flip side of that, do you encourage people to come in here into Real and watch what's going on here?
We're getting, we're getting more and more international visitors.
Amazing.
Right down from medical students who come from all over the world.
Yeah.
To, colleagues who are doing similar things to me, similar things to the other partners in the clinic.
It's so important, isn't it? To actually, and also even to see how other surgical facilities are being run, because I think what you've built here is slightly against the grain of a lot of sort of big private hospitals and clinics, and it's really interesting for people to actually come in and sort of have a look around and see how it all works.
I think the gone are the days of don't copy my homework, and I see you as the enemy, and please I'm out to kill you. I think actually we know that there's plenty of work out there.
Agreed.
I think and it is a growing industry, and actually I'm passionate about the right patients going to the right surgeon in the right place at the right time, with the right frame of mind, etc.
And also being open-minded enough to recognise that you are not the right surgeon for every patient, and you might not want to operate on every patient.
No, I don't. And I'm always sending people off to go and see somebody who I think is going to do a better job.
Yeah.
And
I think as a patient, you really respect a doctor when they say that.
Absolutely.
And, I've had my fair share of either recommending sort of friends, family, colleagues to sort of go and see surgeons and doctors, or even setting up, sometimes these first person pieces within the Tatler surgery guide where, somebody's going off to have a, upper and lower lip blepharoplasty or whatnot, that they get to see the surgeon. The surgeon says, actually, do you know what, this is such a specific case. I'm not the right person, but here's my colleague and they're fantastic. And this is what they do day in, day out. Yeah. And actually the patient always comes away going, oh my God, I really, really liked them because they didn't try and hard sell me. They put me in the right direction.
Absolutely. So, again, coming back to being conscious of time, I think it's probably, the last bit I like to do is to put it back to you, really, because I'm sure we've been talking for a long time.
Hasn't felt like it, though.
We've done a lot of talking, I'm sure, but anything you wanted to say, really? Is there something that in particular that you wanted to, that I'm sure I've forgotten to ask you?
I don't think so. I feel like we've covered absolutely everything. Everything from Tatler Surgery Guide to Beauty Triangle to my future plans, a bit of your future plans, Dubai, which I think we definitely have to make happen.
We need to talk,
I would love that. That would be really interesting.
And so my final question to you in that case, now, first of all, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. It's been such a pleasure.
And it's great. And I think, this podcast series, we're getting there.
Am I the best one you've done so far?
Absolutely.
I'm only the second one, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Second one we filmed, and you may very well be the first one we put out. So
fantastic.
But what about you? What's the future for you? And I know you've got your son. Life has changed. Yeah,
it's interesting. As soon as you said what's the future for me, and even before you said I know you have your son, I think, and I hear this more and more actually. I think there's, I love running my own business, and it's not always a walk in the park, but it's an amazing thing to see yourself growing and building and sort of building a team around you. I'd love to grow the Beauty Triangle even more. I've got Victoria who works with me, who who is an absolute rock star. She's my right hand, and she's worth her weight in gold. I would love our team to grow and expand. But the other reason I love running my own business is because it gives me work-life balance, and it means that I can be there for my son. I can have a family, and I think, well, you'll know this from being the father of two children as well. You never stop worrying about them. There's always going to be something else that comes up, some other worry, some concern, something you have to be around for. And I just think, actually it's so important. Family is the most important thing. And I just want to do something that I love and I get out of bed every single day excited to do, but that also affords me the time and the flexibility to be with my family and do that side of my job properly as well.
And it's the world is changing. It's allowing us to do that so much more and more and more, which is great.
We're very, very lucky, actually. I think, the aftermath of COVID and lockdown, that there was a lot of hardship and adversity that came up, but also we think about life so differently now, I think, in many ways, and certainly how we work and how we juggle and how we balance.
And is there anything you'd do differently?
Is there anything I would do differently? I mean, I think just...
What would you say to your 17-year-old self or whatever?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, or your newly graduated self. What was the degree again?
Criticism, Curation and Communication. You won't remember that one.
No.
They probably struck it off because nobody could pronounce it or remember the order of the words. What would I say to my 17-year-old or newly graduated self? Probably that life never looks how you think it's going to, and it's all good and well to have a plan, but you also need to be prepared to flex. Somebody else gave me that advice, and I think it's the best thing ever. I thought I was going to go into fashion and be a fashion designer.
Right.
I ended up studying fashion journalism at one point, landed a job at Tatler in the beauty department because nothing had come up in fashion yet.
Yeah.
Sort of thought I might get back into fashion, didn't. Fell in love with surgery and aesthetics and went off in a completely different direction.
Is it a good thing that you didn't end up in fashion?
100%.
Yeah.
I love what I do. And how fascinating is this industry that we work in?
Yeah.
I mean, I love fashion. Who doesn't to some extent? But I love the tangibility of what we do and what we talk about every single day. And in all honesty, that's why I stepped away from writing just about beauty and makeup and sort of shampoo and perfume, like aesthetics, cosmetic surgery, connecting people with people who can genuinely help them in their lives. I feel so passionately about that, and I find it so measurable in terms of what people get back. So I think that's a very
great.
Long-winded way of answering your question.
That's a great answer, I think, because for someone like me who doesn't get a lot of what you do, but you know what, I really now believe in it. I really see the value in it, and I don't think a place like this can exist without you, as it were. You know what I mean?
Kind.
Yeah, I think that's what we and I hope a lot of my colleagues genuinely begin to believe in that, or if or I think a lot do already. And if you don't, honestly, it's so important to have that, because at the end of the day, I'm very good at being a good surgical geek, and yes, we're getting better at communicating, and I'm getting better at communicating. But I think if a place like Real can't exist without people like yourself, and I think it's without you, this wouldn't have happened in a way, without sounding too sycophantic.
That's very generous of you.
Thank you. But I think what I'm trying to say is actually, yes, to all of my colleagues who are starting out, work with good communicators. Yes, you're a good surgeon, or we're all the best. I'm the best,
Yeah.
But actually, the world has to understand that in a proper way, and
I
it's
agree.
great,
and there's strength in numbers as well.
Yeah.
I think a lot of doctors, you exist in this world where, certainly in private practice, a lot of people become a bit isolated and they become a bit of an island.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know when we first set up the Beauty Triangle, it was very much about let's just connect these people who don't always have those referral networks. They don't always have the chance to cross-pollinate, cross-collaborate with people. But it's the same, we're all human beings. We have to connect. We have to sort of get our ideas out there, and we do it through one another. So, it's about the collaboration, exactly like you're doing here at Real.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's all about working together. I think 100%. It really is. Anyway, I think we have probably spoken for long enough.
Put the world to rights enough.
Exactly.
People are probably sick of my voice by now. I will stop.
Thank you for coming, and thank you so much for doing this, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. You're a great interviewer.
Oh, gosh,
and it's fascinating for me to be on the opposite side, not just asking questions.
And I'm sure we'll do this again, and we'll try and work out our other angles.
Yes.
And let's make this a habit.
I would love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much. And thank you for joining. Thank you for watching. And see you at the next one.